Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I welcome Mr. Renan. Okay, so sorry for keeping you waiting, Renan. So you are catching from Central America, very early morning today for you. Okay, so thank you for joining. I think Deep, can you make Renan presenter? So if we can, so yeah, quick introduction. Renan is the chief executive. He has multiple roles, by the way. So whatever I remember, so he's the chief executive officer of Great Place to Work for Central America, and also I think he's the chief operating officer for Mexico for operations. He is a managing director for PV Consulting. You have a few more. He's a businessman, okay, and a very active supporter of Balanced Scorecard, the old school uh, uh, expert. Okay, so we'll be very happy to invite Renan for the event. So good morning to you, and please introduce yourself. Yeah.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure that just looking at the agenda, it has been a wonderful agenda just to see the amount of information, the amount of expertise being shown on somewhere between meetings that bring 35, 45, 50-minute engagements. And what this shows is the ability that in today's world, where there's so many practices, we can share best practices. Also, we can share the practices that are not necessarily working. So let me do a very quick introduction. I was asked to prepare some information regarding what small and mid-sized enterprises are based on the time that you guys already have. Let's see if I can cut short my presentation and do it in probably 25, 30 minutes and give you some insights of a little bit of my experience on what it has been regarding the framework and what we've been using in mostly Latin American countries and in the US when facing small and mid-sized enterprises. So I'll be sharing right now the presentation, and I would appreciate it if you guys can tell me if we can see it right now, please.
Yeah, it's coming up, Renan. You can see it. Yeah,
okay.
Please continue.
Okay, let me start then. So the first one is strategy planning and execution for small and mid-sized organizations. And let me start with the first question that usually comes up. It doesn't matter where in the world we are, whether we're in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. What are small and mid-sized organizations? What is a small company? What's a mid-sized company? And I guess anyone can go into Wikipedia. We can go into the World Bank, and I just went into the World Bank right here. And it's very simple to see that depending on any given market, small and mid-sized enterprises, I'm not even saying micro, represent over 50 to 60% of the businesses in the world. In some markets, they represent over 90%. So again, is there a coin term that actually indicates what a small organization is or a mid-size? I'll even go into micro. It depends, and it's going to depend mostly on who you're asking. Are you asking a government entity? Are you asking a financial entity? Are you asking a big retailer company? So I guess I think that what I'll try to bring to the table after listening to and looking at the agenda of what has been presented, I think it's the quality of what we can teach or what we can show in very simple terms these organizations. Because if we start utilizing the same, I'll use the same words, the same teaching methods, the same processes that we utilize with big global entities, with big companies, I'm sure there's going to be a gap between what we're trying to say and what's being understood. So what I just posed on this simple slide is that it depends on revenue, or depending on some markets or some industries, it depends on the number of employees. But I've been asked in different engagements, what happens if we're looking to a small consulting firm that has less than 10 employees, but probably has a revenue of 10 million, 20 million, 30 million? So is that a small company? Again, those are different points and topics of relevant criteria that needs to be reviewed. So I think that while I'll say, depending on the industry, where we are working, small industries, if we were talking about the number of employees, usually are going to be industries that are under 100 employees. And and somewhere in the definition, mid-sized organizations, depending on which market and where we are, can be defined somewhere between 100, and in some markets they'll go to 500. Some markets they'll even go to 1,000 employees. But again, that's why I wanted to start with the big question: what are small and mid-sized organizations? I've had the ability to touch a lot of small and mid-sized organizations in the US, in Latin America, I'll say North America, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. And at the end, what you're going to see is a lot of the key topics that I'll try to discuss over the next 20 minutes. I'll be changing slides right now. So let me start with a general concept that doesn't talk about necessarily the frameworks that we're usually seeing when we're talking about strategy and execution. Let me talk about governance. And I'll talk governance in two different aspects. The first one, when we define governance for small and mid-sized organizations, there are various key topics that usually need a lot of attention from this type of organizations. I'll go, if you can look at the one that I place on the bottom of the concept where it says it's the ethical business practices. This is one of the key topics that I believe that is one of the areas that needs a lot of attention and nurturing, depending on which country, what size of industry, and again, what type of organization you are in. At the end of the day, the ethical business practices is what will bring the opportunity for any company to go into have better operations, if we call that operational efficiency. If that is also something that will, and I'll use the word, help any given small and mid-sized enterprise adapt to change. One of the comments that I just saw on the chat that was posted probably less than 10 minutes ago had to do with the pre-COVID or post-COVID era. The businesses have changed. Even the way that we communicate, this is an excellent example. So have we adapted to change? Can the way we plan and execute and how we tell this to small and mid-sized organization help them adapt to change? Usually big budget organizations, big multinational, big regional, yes, they will. And sometimes they don't. But the key question is, how can we add value in helping organizations that are small or mid-sized adapt to change? Another key topic that I wanted to bring here is, as businesses start growing in any given market, and they'll start looking to go overseas or probably to the country next door, they need to start thinking more of any type of compliance that has to do with the regulations in the market that they're in, and also in the markets that when they're going to go into new markets, it can change drastically. Small and mid-sized organizations, and I'll use just one more concept that was that has been spoken in the previous conferences: access to funding. A lot of small and mid-sized enterprises have a lot of difficulty in have clarity when they go to financial institutions to have access to funding. Why? Because there's usually a lack of order. And that's a little bit of what I'll be showing in the next couple of slides. So let me go back to what I said at the beginning of this slide. Ethical business practices It doesn't matter which country we're in. We can be in India, we can be in Pakistan, we can be in Germany, we can be in Mexico. It doesn't matter. It's about the principles. And from there, yes, it will be very, very, very important for any given company to start using the correct framework. But if we have the ethical business practices not where everyone will understand, those practices will be one of the key issues that governance needs to attend. Now, the next slide shows why is governance so important in family companies? Because most, I'd say in many countries, small companies start by being family owned. Even I'll call it, in companies that have grown into mid-sized companies, there's still big family owned companies. Today, if we go to any stock exchange in the world, we'll still find big companies that started probably 50, 100 years ago that had clarity of how they had to grow. And let me go to the left-hand side of the screen where it says the part where it reads how management needs to be professionalized. That is, at the end of the day, one of the key areas that the best habits that we can bring to the table to any given company, whether it's a mid-sized company or a small-sized company, is how to institutionalize key processes from the way that the mission is drawn to the way that they are measuring their individual KPIs. So again, I wanted to note that in the red color. Why? Because at the end, what we are trying to bring to the understanding of most of these organizations is how they can institutionalize most of their processes. And again, in the color yellow, around on top of the professionalization of management, it reads family dynamics. I invite you to go and look at least 5 or 10 companies that are family owned and think of them companies that have over 500 employees. Do they still operate in the same way they operated probably 10, 20 years ago? The family dynamics are a big concept in most of this type of companies. And the conflict resolution that I just wanted to point there, the conflict resolution is something that will happen when there is not necessarily a lot of clarity on governance and succession planning. Why? Because you'll find that companies that are going from a first to a second generation or a second to a third generation might see the planning cycle and the way they do strategy in different ways, obviously, how to execute it. So again, I think that there are a few key topics that need to be profoundly thought upon when we're discussing how are we going to engage with family-owned companies or small and mid-sized companies. Key topics. I already spoke a little bit about this one. Let me just go ahead and give it 1 minute more point of attention here. Ethical businesses practices. Strong governance encourages ethical behavior and integrity within the organization. If this is something that the leaders of the organization profoundly believe in and work upon, this can be cascaded down. Again, if it goes the other way, it also can be cascaded down. So it is the focus of leadership to promote and to be an example of ethical businesses practices. Operational efficiency, depending on what we understand, I'll just try to say that it brings clarity in roles and responsibilities and the decision-making processes at any level. It should reduce conflicts, and it should focus a lot of performance indicators that probably did not exist and now we need to create. And let me just go where it says professionalization of management. Establishing governance structures encourages the professionalization of management within family business. And that for any given company, if we talk about the tech industry, that's where the tech industry is trying to add value. If we talk about the consulting business, that is where the consulting industry is trying to add value. If we talk about the financial institutions, that is where the financial institutions are trying to add value. And last but not least, if these companies are going to grow at a regional level, it is very important to attract foreign investment, engage in international trade, obviously, and participate in global markets. Global markets are not necessarily the biggest markets. They can go from one small country to another one, but we need to do it in an orderly way. Let me run with, I'll try to close this in the next 10, 15 minutes. And let me ask a few questions that I've seen within many organizations in many countries. Why planning and execution fails in small and mid-sized organizations? And I have 2 slides for this. Number 1, lack of clarity in objectives. Again, just by saying that, how we pose this, it is something very important on how we can help them. Do we call them objectives? Do we call them long-term objectives? As in big multinational companies, do we think that we believe that we need to talk about the objectives in what, 1 year, 2 years, 6 months? Pure communication, I wrote that as number 2, because I've seen in companies that are not very big, some companies that are even smaller than 100 employees, where everyone knows everyone, and probably the company is in the same city or at least in 2 cities. Pure communication is a killer for this. Obviously, the process that plans are not necessarily placed in an adequate way. Again, it doesn't matter if an organization is very big or very small. This even happens in big corporations. The resistance to change, the way that if it's a family-owned company, we've seen a lot of companies say, this is the way we do it. This is the way that we did it 10 years ago, and this is the way it was created. So I guess resistance to change is not necessarily only something that needs to be seen from the top. It's something that happens at any level in the organization. And number 5, where we're having difficulty in planning and not necessarily having the resources required. On the last presentation that Khalid gave, which is an excellent presentation, he was talking about clarity of cash flow. Depending who we're asking, they'll say cash is king. Yes, cash is king. If we had the ability to plan ahead. And this is one of the key areas that we need to help the small and mid-sized organizations, how their planning cycles work. They don't have a lot of people. Probably they're going to have very small departments, 1, 2 individual departments. Why? Because that is the way that they're composed. And usually we need to help them with the clarity of planning cycles and what means of resources they're going to need. I've seen so many times what I wrote in number 6, unrealistic expectations. Just by thinking that we have a very good fortified process to plan ahead, that doesn't mean that we can expect the best results to happen in a very short period of time. And those are, I would say, one of the key metrics that small and mid-sized organizations have. A lot of them have the urgency view that most items need to happen very fast. Most actions need to happen very fast. So is that an unrealistic expectation? Again, depends on the time frame. It depends on the region. It depends on where we are. In effective leadership, it doesn't mean that this goes just from the C-level. We can say that there's C-level in small companies and mid-sized companies. It means that even if we have leaders that are in a restaurant, in a warehouse, in logistics, it depends how we're taking care of what our leaders are communicating and what our leaders are not communicating. How we adapt to change, whatever change means in the process, is so important. Just to use a new framework, just to start utilizing and measuring new KPIs. And obviously, how we're doing our monitoring and evaluation processes. And this is something very important, when a company is growing into another region of a big country, or when a company wants to move their products and services into other markets. They need to understand what the culture is. And I wrote cultural barriers because usually for big multinationals, they went through this process many, many years ago, probably many decades ago. For companies who are breaking ground and growing at a very fast rate, if something works and is a product that serves a good percentage of a market in a country, that doesn't mean that it can be marketed and sensed in the same way in a different market. So this is a big challenge for small and mid-sized organizations. So about to wrap up in the next 5 minutes, let me say, why do businesses fail? And this is something that comes out from entrepreneur.com. This has been up in the air for a few years. And it says the entrepreneurial myth. And this, for us as specialists, we can help. Well, a lot of the companies, when they say, if you're a specialist in one area of trade, it has nothing to do with creating or developing a business in this area. I love food. I've seen a lot of people say, I studied to be a great chef. I'm going to put a chain of restaurants, even if they have the cash flow, Why? When a business is created with this mentality, the entrepreneur or the business owner will acquire at least, and I just placed there 6 different hats. Of course, there's more. The general manager, the marketing manager, the sales manager, the financial manager, the operations manager, the human resource manager. So it's not, and this is one of the myths that I've seen over and over and over again. Please, I can say I've seen it in the US, I've seen it in Mexico, where I'm right now. I've seen it in countries in Central America, in the Caribbean, in South America. So I'm sure in your neck of the woods, this is something that will happen today. This is something that I need for the experts or the people who are actually managing this at any level. How can we share best practices? Because very few schools teach how to develop a business, a small or mid-sized, from zero. Not all businesses are tech. Not everything will happen over the internet. Okay, so this is one that we can talk about. Many entrepreneurs believe they're not accountable for the results of their business. Lack of focus. Oh, I created the business. I don't need to be accountable for anyone. Is that true? And I'll say that not only for small businesses, that happens even for mid-sized businesses. Many entrepreneurs develop their business in a way that it cannot grow without them being fully involved in the operation. This is a perfect way for a business not to go the way it needs to go. So these are a few key topics that I wanted to bring to the table, and the full mentality. And entrepreneurs do not develop a focus on a specific market or develop a competitive advantage for their business. And again, this will come from the framework, whatever framework we're telling them to use, whether it's a business scorecard, whether it's a Canvas. I believe that there's an area to help entrepreneurs. Even when we define an entrepreneur that has been in business for 5 years or 10 years, they'll say, oh, I'm a small business owner. I already went from being an entrepreneur into a existing model, into an existing business model. There's usually a lack of areas of expertise where we can add value to them. And I'll be closing in the next 2 minutes. I know for you guys, it's been a long day, so let's see if we can do this very fast. The importance of planning and execution for small and mid-sized organizations. I'm not going to go into the cycle that everyone knows, that it's very important. But let's just put a few concepts. Develop a clear strategy map. Should we call it a strategy map for a small organization? No, the answer is no. We need to put it in simple terms that they will understand it. We need also to help them how to cascade it through the organization. Even if the organization is small, we need to tell them. Why? Because probably they don't have the ability or the clarity of how to do it. Align objectives with business goals. That's a clear one. And when we start talking about strategic initiatives, of course, the term is very simple for us. We use this at a mid-sized company or a small company. They're going to say, strategic what? And probably the word that we need to tell them is, hey guys, we're going to help you do special projects. And that's where we're going to start allocating resources. And of course, we need to implement performance measures. This is something that we are going to be helping mid-sized organizations in any area, not only financial, not only organizational, not only marketing, I mean everywhere. And they need to be very simple. Why? Because the team who is going to be managing this usually are very, very small teams. And last one, I'd say we need to help them foster a culture of continuous improvement. This is something that usually big corporations, multinational corporations, or even local companies that are big in stock exchanges, this is something that usually happens for them on a daily basis. For small and mid-sized enterprises, this is something that needs to be created. Build cross-functional collaboration. Use technology wisely. I've seen so many companies that they have great ERPs, great CRMs, and they're using it the incorrect way. And they say, oh, we spend so much money. The balanced scorecard, we even sent a few of our executives to the best schools, and look, nothing happened. So it's not only technology, again, it goes with the frameworks. And employee training and development is something that needs to be a key topic for any type of these organizations. So this is where I'm coming to the end of my 25-minute presentation. Just wanted to be very tough on time because I know you guys are running a little bit late. So I'll say thank you, and I'll be ready if there's any questions to be asked.
It's a very, very interesting point of view and advice for the small and mid-sized organizations. This is really true. So far, we were discussing about the larger organizations with so much infrastructure, resources availability. But small and mid-sized organizations definitely need the same level of attention, the same level of complexity of the business, but with the limited resources. Okay, so that is something which is excellent. Your 5-point present slide in the last you've shown that talks about that answers all the questions. Okay, so basically what I infer is the smaller organizations need have a strategy focus and also need to have a strategy execution mindset. Okay, that cannot be taken for granted. Okay, so so when we go, so one more point what I like is don't use complicated terminologies like strategic initiatives. Use something called special projects. Okay, so to make them very easy. I think you have helped so many small, mid-sized organizations to optimize their processes and get business results. Okay, so that is something coming from is very interesting, very interesting. So any more questions from the team? So let me quickly see it. Typically, in the region, it all depends because the owner mindset, because as you said, the small, mid-sized companies mostly managed by the owner managers. Okay, so they are good in some areas and they don't know some areas. Okay, so it will be a little harder to convince the areas where they are not exposed, something like financial management or whatever. Okay, so what is the tips for to change the management mindset for the small mid-sized business owners who are managing? So any tips and tricks how to
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can bring. I'll use what you just asked, and I'm just reading point number 1, where it reads lack of talent beyond the CXO level. Not that they cannot pay for smart talent, but smart talent is always looking for something bigger. So I think that that's a very good one. I think that we need to help small organizations by providing or by creating packaged solutions, at least that probably will not take care of 100% of their needs. But if we are able to help them in the right direction, at least, and I'll go back to the basics, just helping them with the mission, with the vision, with the way that they are going to put in their, I don't want to say again the ethical part, but their values. where the values of their leadership is, and where they see this based on whatever their planning cycles are. Small and mid-sized enterprises, when we even talk about 5 years for them, they don't have the ability to even look 2-3 years ahead. So I think that if I'll use, if the professionals, the experts, the solution providers, if we have the ability to add value in creating packages, solutions that can be utilized by, I don't just want to say small and mid-sized enterprises. We need even to help them at an industry level. Are they retailers, restaurant retailers? Are they regional operational companies? Are they in the service industries? So I think that there's a point of view where we can add value even by talking about at an industry level. And I think I'll go back to what you said, utilizing very simple terms. I think that if there was a book about the balanced scorecard and the strategic planning execution that is 200 pages big, when we take that process, or we want to bring that product into a small and mid-sized enterprise market, yeah, we would need to develop something much simpler, much smaller, understanding that the impact will probably is not going to be immediate, but we're going to be bringing great habits and probably great opportunities for these organizations to learn, to practice, and to grow. And for us, the practitioners, I think there's a beautiful, beautiful market where we can add value. I think that would be, and whether the practitioner is a consultant, whether the practitioner is an executive, whether the practitioner is a tech company. So I think there's a big opportunity there.
So big opportunity for consultants. That's something very interesting to hear, because it's all how you bundle your offer and trying to help the companies. Okay, so if you make it simple, straightforward, result oriented, then you have a fantastic business, and then you will enjoy the transformations. Okay, and witness the growth. Thank you, Renan. Thank you very much for joining so early and giving us valuable insights. Okay, so appreciate. So thank you very much. Thank you. It's really.
Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful evening. The best for all.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.